UFC 292 is coming up next weekend, and today I'm going to be breaking down every single fight on the card for you guys today. Timestamps will be there if you'd like to skip to a particular fight. I would appreciate you guys watching whatever part you'd like to. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I'm your guy with too many YouTube channels, and welcome back to another full card breakdown and prediction video. Just like I said, it was a absolute banger of a card, but now that we've lost some fights, it's going a little bit downhill. Regardless, the fights that are on this card are absolutely fantastic, and I cannot wait to talk about them, guys. Let me know what your predictions will be down below, and let's get into the first fight. Starting off with the first fight, and is the Ultimate Fighter finale, and this is a little bit surprising to see as like the first fight on the card. I don't know if they don't usually do that. I don't remember. It's got to be like co-main events of fight nights they used to do this, right? I could be wrong. Regardless, this is the first Ultimate Fighter that I've watched in a pretty long time. So we have Holobaugh versus Hubbard. Both these guys did not do well in the UFC at all, but something to note is that take a look at some of his losses here. It is Raoni Barcelos, Shane Burgos, and Thiago Moises, and then he got cut from the UFC, and that was over 4 years ago. So that's a quality opponents that he lost to. Hubbard has not had that same success. Like, while he hasn't taken on anybody where it's like absolute bums or anything like that, Kurt definitely had the better UFC run. So what we have seen since then is both of them got 2 wins and then came into the Ultimate Fighter. I do like Hubbard a little bit more in this matchup because he is in his prime right now, and what we've seen from this guy, we've seen heart, we've seen relentless pressure, and we have seen him be able to have every little bit of his game. Like, he doesn't like have anything where he is overly good at, but he's pretty solid everywhere. It's not to say Kurt isn't. Kurt definitely has some nice combinations. Kurt can fight everywhere as well, but I do like the grit that we've seen from Hubbard. I do like the pressure we've seen from him, and I think somebody at 31 versus 36 years old, I think that pressure might get to Kurt, and I'm going with Hubbard to take this win. Moving on to the next fight, guys, Andrea Lee versus Natalia Silva. Now, long story short, guys, I am very high on Natalia Silva. Coming into the UFC, she has looked absolutely fantastic, and these wins have aged quite well. She is having absolutely no problem. She is steamrolling her opponents. She's taking on Andrea Lee, who has been in the UFC for a very long time with a very spotty record. Recently, though, she had a loss right here, but her last fight against Maycee Barber, this was absolutely a win. I believe most of the world agrees with that. Maycee Barber completely robbed her. It's not to say Maycee Barber, but the judges ended up robbing her. So I'm looking at Andrea Lee like she's coming off of a win. It was an okay performance, but nothing really stuck out to me. Natalia Silva, I am extremely high on. I am always all about never betting on WMMA, but I will be placing a bet on Natalia Silva. I like what I've seen from her. She is dangerous on the feet. She's dangerous on the ground. She has very nice technique for the division. And Andrea Lee is not one of those fighters in this division that has no technique, is very sloppy. She's just okay. You know what I mean? She's just okay. She's starting to slow down just a little bit, and she's had, again, a very spotty record, 13-7. I love what I've seen from Natalia Silva so far. I don't know how she's going to win it, but I'm very confident that she's going to win it. She is a confident pick of mine. Natalia Silva, I think, will win however she wants, likely by submission. Moving on to the next fight, we have Moroz versus Karine Silva, another Silva that I am very high on. Let's start with Moroz. So she's been okay. Like, she had a little bit of a nice win streak, and the opponents are like pretty decent. This loss against this win over Mayra Silva did age very well. However, in her recent fight against Jennifer Maia, she looked absolutely horrible. I don't know if that was an off night for her or if it's tough to say because she looked okay in these 3 fights and she's looked okay earlier in her career as well. But I don't know, like it must have been an off night for Jennifer Maia, or Jennifer Maia maybe just shut down her game a little bit. I don't really know what to think there. However, she's coming off of a fight where she looked absolutely horrible. It was the worst performance we've seen from her in her career. She's taking on, though, Karine Silva. I forget how to actually pronounce that. But this girl, coming off of the Contender Series, she has been on a roll. Very powerful, quick submissions, nice takedowns, going straight into subs. This girl is very technical on the ground, and she's technical on the feet as well, to be honest with you. But this ground game is something to really look out for. I think Karine Silva will find another submission very quickly. She's going to do what she wants to Munhoz. If she wants to go in and strike and then go for a takedown, she can do that. I am so high. I'm actually going to be betting on this fight as well. I love the 2 Silvas that we've talked about. Karine Silva, I definitely think will win this fight. Moving on to the next fight, guys. This one is going to be an absolute banger. We have Gregory Rodrigues, the return of RoboCop, taking on Denis, and I always pronounce his last name wrong, guys. I apologize. Tiuliulin. That's how I'm going to say it. So, Gregory Rodrigues, he is one of the fan favorites as of recent. I was really, really high on this guy. I thought he was going to steamroll at least the guys outside of the top 15. But then we've seen him have a couple losses here, and I'm not so sure anymore. I still think the guy's very dangerous, but I don't know. I don't know what to think of Gregory Rodrigues and how far he'll go, but he's taking on a guy somewhere around his level, and this is why it's a very interesting fight. So we've seen him have some nice wins. We've seen him have some nice losses, but both those losses and wins, honestly, have aged very, very well, in my opinion. He's coming off a loss against Bruno Ferreira, which I was shocked that he lost this fight, to be honest with you. But to be fair, he was doing very well in this fight, and then just got chinned. So Gregory Rodrigues, we've seen him chin now, and he likes to go in there and put on an absolute slugfest. It's like the word that I really like to put to Gregory Rodrigues here is calculated chaos. You know when people say that, where he's like, he has no problem coming forward and having an absolute crazy slugfest, but in that slugfest, he remains technical. It's not like he's absolutely just throwing haymakers and making it like a bar fight. You know what I mean? Gregory Rodrigues is very good at that. But somebody else who is very good at that is Denis Tiuliulin. Now, Denis Tiuliulin, of course, he's 11-7, had a very, very rough record even coming into the UFC, but in these wins and losses, like the win is the only one that hasn't really aged too well, but the loss against Jong Park and the loss against Karizev is very, very good. They have aged very well. So Denis, he's kind of like Gregory Rodrigues in the sense where he'll come forward, put a lot of pressure, and want to strike with you. But I think Gregory Rodrigues is just a little bit better at doing that. I think this is a fight that it's really, really close to 50-50. If you made me pick, I would pick Gregory Rodrigues, but honestly, I don't know, because what's going to happen in this fight is they're going to come forward and they're going to slug. Gregory Rodrigues absolutely 100% has the edge in the ground game, but I don't think he's going to explore that option. If he does, this should be an easy win for him because we've seen Denis taken down and controlled before. I think it's going to be a slugfest though, and whoever gets chinned, that's how it's going to go. That's why it's like, I don't know who to pick, but I'm going to go with Gregory Rodrigues because he does have those more options. He is a little bit more technical in those situations, so that's going to be my pick, but I am not confident in this pick whatsoever. Moving on to the next fight, guys, this fight might hurt my heart a little bit because we have the return of Chris Weidman, and he's taking on Brad Tavares. So, Chris Weidman, very, very long time in the UFC. Both these guys have had a long time in the UFC. We all know Chris Weidman, and we all know Brad Tavares. Chris Weidman is one of my favorite fighters. I always cheer for this guy. Of course, let me start off with his last fight. Of course, we all know at the beginning of the fight with Uriah Hall, he ended up snapping his leg, and his leg did get broken. It was one of the most brutal things ever. Crazy it happened to him and Anderson Silva after, like, he got a kick check, and Anderson Silva broke his leg, and then it kind of like the same thing happened to him, which was absolutely wild. Before that, though, Chris Weidman, he came into the UFC, and he had an amazing run. He went straight to championship, undefeated. He looked amazing. Then after his loss to Lou Rockhold, everything went downhill for him. He's had mostly losses, but like coming back, talking about his last 5, this is 6 years ago. He's been a very, very inactive fighter. I'm shocked that he beat Kelvin Gastelum, to be honest with you, but even that's he had a size advantage over Kelvin Gastelum, so there you go. But then he had a loss to Jacare Souza, a loss to Dominic Reyes, 2 quality opponents, to be honest with you, and then he actually got a nice win, but then you're starting to fight outside of the rankings, you know what I mean? Then Chris Weidman, but even then he didn't look fantastic or anything in that fight. And then he had another return 2 years ago where he broke his leg against Uriah Hall. He's taken on Brad Tavares, who he's way better than his 19-8 record. Let me say that, because he has half losses. He is very, very good, Brad Tavares. He is so much better than his record, okay? Taking a look at his last 5, he has a loss to Edmund Shabazian when Edmund Shabazian was somebody to really, really hype up and go crazy about. But then he had 2 really nice wins. Then he had, again, quality opponents in losses in Dricus du Plessis and Bruno Silva. So those losses have aged very well. Brad Tavares is a very, very good fighter. So is Chris Weidman. I'm going to be cheering for Chris Weidman in this fight. I hope he comes back. I hope he gets that win. Chris Weidman is 39 years old. He's fighting a guy, and Chris Weidman, we all know, has a little bit of a chin issue now. He's fighting a guy with very good takedown defense in Brad Tavares, and even if he does get taken down, he can spring right back up to his feet. I don't like the ring rust for Chris Weidman. I don't even know how much he's been training because of that leg. So how hard has he been training for a very long time? I know now he can kick at full power with his leg, but I can't put faith in Chris Weidman, man. He's 39 years old, already has a chin issue, coming back after a long injury. Who knows what his what he's going to be like mentally coming into this fight. He said that he's going to throw the hardest leg kick of his life. That's the first thing he's going to do. If he does that, that's stupid, in my opinion, because he needs to get over that fear. You know what I mean? Like, I guess it could work out, but I think that's ridiculous to do. Brad Tavares has a very nice all-around game, and I feel like he's going to catch Chris Weidman. I feel like Chris Weidman is going to get put down again and have a very, very sad retirement. That's how I see this fight going, but I will be cheering for Chris Weidman. I'm going to actually be putting a bet on Brad Tavares, though. I like him in this matchup particularly. I got to go with Brad Tavares, man. It's sad to say, but I got to pick him. Moving on to the next fight. This is another interesting matchup, guys. We have a lot of really good fights to talk about today. We have Gerald Meerschaert taking on Andre Petroski. So Gerald Meerschaert, I always like to talk about him like he has like the Michael Johnson effect, where he's a good fighter, but he can win against anybody and he can lose against anybody. That's been the story of Gerald Meerschaert in 35-16. Kind of speaks for itself there. He's been a very active fighter. Like pretty much his whole career. He's always like, every few months you'll see Gerald Meerschaert, you know what I mean? You can see his wins, his losses. He's fought some very, very, very good fighters, and it seems like when Gerald Meerschaert, I want to say like when he fights like the best of the best competition or people that go on to like be future champions, he definitely loses. But then again, he has like some really quality wins in there. So Gerald Meerschaert is a very good fighter, primarily a grappler, but he's okay in the stand-up. But of course, he wants to get to the ground, and once he gets to the ground, he is a very, very good submission artist. He can always catch something, kind of like you see with Paul Craig. He's always live for a submission. He's taking out Andre Petroski, who has been on a nice little tear so far. Coming into the UFC, he has looked very, very good. However, where I'm worried about this fight is he hasn't taken on anybody like Gerald Meerschaert yet. I believe that Gerald Meerschaert is better than people give him credit for. So Andre Petroski, he's had some really nice wins, and he's looked dominant in a couple of those wins. But I don't know how it's going to go with Gerald Meerschaert, because Andre Petroski comes in. The goal is to get it to the ground. The goal is to use his wrestling. The goal could be to get his submission. You know what I mean? Is he going to come in with that same game plan? I would have to imagine so. But if you take Gerald Meerschaert down, he's going to be live for a submission. And that's if you can take Gerald Meerschaert down. You know what I mean? So this is a fight where I'm like, I'm not so sure. What Andre Petroski could do, and something that I could see happening, is Andre Petroski does, while he isn't the most technical fighter on his feet, he carries a lot of power in his shots, and we have seen Gerald Meerschaert get chinned multiple times throughout his career. So I could see a scenario playing out like that, but I got to think that Andre Petroski would still want to try to bring this fight to the ground. That is his bread and butter. So this is where I'm like, I'm not too sure about this fight. I'm going to go with Andre Petroski because, again, I could see a KO happening in this fight. I like that he's still kind of in his prime at 32 years old. Gerald Meerschaert, we've seen him lose too many times, and Andre Petroski is on a little bit of a momentum swing right now. I'm going to pick Andre Petroski, but I am not entirely confident in my pick. But I'm going to pick him. Andre Petroski for the win. Moving on to the next fight, we have Neil Magny taking on Ian Machado. Garry, guys, Neil Magny is one of my favorite fighters. I am probably Neil Magny's biggest fan, to be honest with you. I love watching this guy fight. He is a true BMF. If you want to talk about BMFs, this guy will take on anybody, anywhere, anytime. However, Neil Magny has had a very, very spotty record. Neil Magny is a very good fighter. Okay, let's talk about the records first. Okay, so Neil Magny, as you can see, he's had his ups, he's had his downs. He's fought amazing opponents. He's always fighting great opponents. However, in my opinion, I thought that Phil Rowe did beat Neil Magny. I was shocked that Neil Magny won this fight, so I'm kind of looking at Neil Magny on a 2-fight losing streak right here. Ian Garry, 12-0, has looked absolutely fantastic so far coming to the UFC. He's looked great, and he's shown me, and this is where I was really, really starting to pay attention to Ian Garry. Against Kenan Song, we've seen him get clipped, we've seen him in trouble, and we've seen him overcome that and get a win. So that's when I was like, okay, so if this guy isn't exactly destroying somebody, he is always live to get a KO. I really, really like watching this guy fight. And then he had a very beautiful win in a head kick against Daniel Rodrigues, although I think Daniel Rodrigues is a little bit overrated, to be honest with you. I was very confident that Ian Garry would get this win here. So Ian Garry is now taking on the best fighter that he's taken on in his career so far. I will say, though, that Neil Magny has taken this fight on short notice, and that is one of the reasons why I'm going to be picking Ian Garry to win this fight. I can see a world where Neil Magny... Well, here's the thing. I could see Neil Magny coming in and wanting to clinch and just wrestle with Ian Garry. That seems like it should be the game plan, because Ian Garry is great at striking. He's great at what he does. Very, very live for a KO. He has very, very slick striking. That's not to say that he can't grapple. We just haven't seen a lot of it. You know what I mean? So Neil Magny will probably be the better grappler here. Neil Magny is one of those guys that's always in shape, so I don't imagine like him taking this fight on short notice will be too bad for him. However, it's still fight on short notice, and Ian Garry has been training very hard. Ian Garry is one of the most motivated fighters in the division, so he's been training very, very hard. I don't like that Neil Magny is 36. Ian Garry hasn't even hit his prime yet, and he's already looking good. I was really, really convinced that this guy was a real deal in the Kenan Song fight. And I understand like that he didn't beat anyone like crazy. You know what I mean? It's Kenan Song. Like, he's an okay fighter, but I like the fact that he's overcome adversity now, and we've seen kind of like an all-round game from Ian Machado Garry. I gotta pick him to win this fight. I have to. To be honest with you, like, I don't hate Ian Garry like a lot of people do. I don't get the hate that's coming that guy's way, but I like Neil Magny, man. It's kind of like Chris Weidman. I will always cheer for Neil Magny, but I gotta pick Ian Garry to win this fight. I have a hard time seeing him putting away Neil Magny, though. If he puts away Neil Magny, if he has another head kick KO, then I'm going to be like, oh man, this guy's going to be an absolute problem for the division. It's a very interesting fight. I'm going to pick Ian Garry to win. Moving on to the next fight. Two of my favorite fighters. I love Pedro Munhoz, man. I like me some Cheeto, but I love Pedro Munhoz. We have Marlon Vera taking on Pedro Munhoz. So I'll start with Marlon Vera. Marlon Vera is one of those fighters where it's been like, he's had a very spotty record coming in the UFC, but all of a sudden, he went on a very, very nice win streak, and he looked great doing so. He looked very powerful. He looked great, but to be honest with you, he hasn't taken on the top of the division. While these are quality wins, okay? They're very, very nice wins against very good fighters. Once you fight a guy like Corey Sandhagen, who's at the absolute peak of the division, we've seen him get absolutely destroyed. This was a split decision. Whoever gave this judge to Cheeto needs to be fired. Like, that was such a bad, like, when they said, oh, judge this scores it for Corey Sandhagen, I was like, oh my God, they could actually rob Corey Sandhagen here. It was a domination by Corey Sandhagen. Corey Sandhagen did whatever he wanted to Marlon Vera, and it was, like, I don't know what else to say. Corey Sandhagen absolutely won that fight. So Marlon Vera got horribly, not exposed, like, we always knew that the ground game could have been a weakness or a striking style, like Corey Sandhagen could have a problem with Marlon Vera, but he's coming off of a really rough loss, okay? But I don't think losing to Corey Sandhagen is anything to ride home about, you know what I mean? He's taking on Pedro Munhoz, who I, at one point, was very confident that this guy would be a champion in the division. I love Pedro Munhoz. This guy can do everything anywhere. He can slug with you. He can go to the ground. He can strike with you. Very good leg kicks, something best you'll see in the division. Pedro Munhoz is a very good fighter. He's always been fighting guys at the top of the division. He's always been fighting guys who are amazing. So when you see Pedro Munhoz's 7 losses, they're nothing like, they're like against Aldo and Dominic Cruz. That's really nothing to look down upon. And then, of course, you have the weird eye poke injury to Sean O'Malley. I don't think that Pedro Munhoz is a guy to really fake that. I know a lot of people were off the Pedro Munhoz train because they thought he was faking the eye poke and just wanted to get out of the fight. Pedro Munhoz, if you've seen any of his other fights, this dude has the heart of a champion. So, and then he took on Chris Gutierrez, which I don't remember, to be honest with you, if I thought he'd win this fight, but I was worried that Chris Gutierrez was a little bit better. Maybe he was a little bit overrated. Regardless, Pedro looked fantastic in this fight. So, it's tough, man. This division is so good. Pedro Munhoz is just one of those guys that I feel like... So, Marlon Vera, let me say this. Marlon Vera is one of those guys who usually loses technically, and then he'll just KO you. He'll hit you with a really, really big power shot. And that's not to say that Marlon Vera isn't technical. That's not to say that Marlon Vera isn't a good fighter. Marlon Vera is just incredibly patient and inactive until he knows he can catch you. I'm imagining this. Pedro Munhoz just outstriking him, right? Okay, and something that I'm a little bit weary on his outstriking is he has a 5-inch reach disadvantage, and that's not good to have against Cheeto Vera because he uses his reach and his length very well. I can see Pedro Munhoz outstriking him, hitting him with some nice calf kicks, going in and out, looking very, very good. If Marlon Vera does end up landing his huge power shots, I have a hard time seeing him like really rock Pedro Munhoz. You know what I mean? This guy has an iron chin. This guy, you can hit him with a lot of stuff, and it looks like it didn't even affect him. You know what I mean? That's why I'm going to be picking Pedro Munhoz to win this fight. I think Marlon Vera's game plan won't work against Pedro Munhoz. And it's a 3-round fight. Marlon Vera thrives off of 5-round main events. I like Pedro Munhoz in this matchup. However, like when you're talking about Cheeto Vera, he's one of those guys that's always live for a KO. He can always catch you with like a nice front kick like we've seen him do before. You know what I mean? He has huge power in his hands. He can always catch you. But I think Pedro Munhoz will just outstrike him the whole time. Maybe he'll go for a ground game, but I think Pedro Munhoz will just utilize his calf kick, move in and out very nicely. Reach might be a little bit of an issue, but I think Pedro Munhoz can do this. He's 36 years old, which worries me a little bit, but we haven't really seen him slow down yet. I'm going to go with Pedro Munhoz. Give me Pedro Munhoz to win this fight. Moving on to the co-main event, we have Weili Zhang taking on Amanda Lemos. Now, Weili Zhang, I'm a big fan of. Weili 2.0. Guys, long story short, I think Weili's going to steamroll Amanda Lemos. Weili Zhang coming to the UFC, it looked like an absolute killer. Then, I was shocked that she lost both of these fights. Both of them. I was absolutely shocked that she lost to Rose Namajunas. I think she's a better fighter in general. I have no explanation for that. I'm shocked that she lost, but she did lose. Then came back and started steamrolling her opponents again. Looked very, very good in those fights, okay? She's taking on Amanda Lemos, who is a very underrated contender in the strawweight division. Of course, she's getting a title fight, but among the casual fan base, you cannot count this girl out, okay? She has very nice boxing, very wonderful, very, very nice power in her hands. Huge power for the division. The only loss was against Jessica Andrade. At the time, or even now, don't take anything away about losing to Jessica Andrade. You could always lose to Jessica Andrade in the division, you know what I mean? But then, came back, and it looked very good, especially against Maryna Rodrigues, who I am very high on the division, 16-1. She's looked very good in the UFC. So, while I am high on Weili Zhang, Amanda Lemos is the proper contender to fight for the title. What worries me is she's 36 years old, so we haven't exactly seen her slow down yet, but that day is coming. We don't know when that'll come. Weili Zhang, I'm shocked that she's 34 years old. I thought she was younger for some reason. I always think that Weili Zhang is younger. But here's the thing, okay? Amanda Lemos will always be live for a KO. I don't think she's she's just a boxer. I'm talking about her boxing a lot, and I'm saying, okay, Amanda Lemos, she has very nice hands, very nice power. That's true. She does have an okay all-around game. But I think if you want to talk wrestling, you want to talk about jiu-jitsu, clinch work, anything like that, anything that's not just boxing, I absolutely give Weili Zhang the edge there. Not just an edge. I think she's absolutely better. But even if, I think Weili Zhang would be able to box with Amanda Lemos. The problem is, we've seen Weili clip before in that Rose Namajunas fight. Amanda Lemos has that power in the division where the potential to clip Weili's there. So that worries me a little bit, okay? That worries me. Amanda could absolutely catch Weili and put her to sleep. She has that power. But if she doesn't, Weili's going to be all over. Weili's going to do whatever she wants to, or whether she wants to finish the ground, finish it on the feet. I think Weili is absolutely the better fighter, and I'm going to be picking her to win this fight. Give me Weili Zhang by however she wants. Moving on to the main event, Aljamain Sterling taking on Sean O'Malley. This is a main event that I am very, very excited for, and I made a very long video if you guys want to go check out the actual full breakdown that I did of this fight. So Aljamain Sterling, let me start with him, okay? He's the champion, and he has a lot of very nice wins, but he has a lot of asterisks towards his recent wins, and I think it's very warranted to say so, okay? So let's take a look at Corey Sandhagen. He looked very good against Corey Sandhagen. That win has aged very well, but I think Corey Sandhagen is ultimately improved since then. But here's where it all starts. Petr Yan, he was getting demolished that fight. Petr Yan threw the illegal knee. We all know what happened. Aljamain Sterling won the fight by DQ. Then he had a very nice fight against Petr Yan in a rematch where, honestly, that fight could have went either way. I gave the edge to Sterling, but a lot of people thought Yan was robbed. It's a very close fight. That fight could have went either way. However, then TJ Dillashaw had one arm. He couldn't fight. He couldn't pose any threat to Aljamain Sterling, so Aljamain Sterling won that fight. And then the Henry Cejudo fight, where this fight, again, could have gone either way. You could be looking at this last four. It could be a 4-loss streak for Aljamain Sterling. Could be. It could be a 3 fight, because, you can't really count this one as a win. 3-fight losing streak. You could look at it that way. Or, I guess, not with TJ Dillashaw, but, if TJ Dillashaw was healthy, I think TJ Dillashaw would annihilate Sterling. That's the problem, okay? I mean, no disrespect when I talk about Aljamain Sterling this way, but there is something to say about each of his wins. You know what I mean? Let's talk Sean O'Malley, though. Sean O'Malley, very good record, 16-1. He has looked very, very good in his career. However, there are also asterisks to his wins. All of these wins are against opponents that are, again, I mean, absolutely no disrespect, but you might as well not have fought them. That's a given win for Sean O'Malley. Then, of course, he had the early eye poke with Pedro Munhoz. We didn't really get to see that fight play out, but then he had the fight against Petr Yan, which he absolutely got robbed in. So this is the tough thing. Sean O'Malley, for the first time in his career, outside of Petr Yan, is taking on the champion of the division, and this is a huge jump up in competition. We haven't seen, in my opinion, enough of Sean O'Malley. However, I will say, in this fight against Petr Yan, while I believe he lost his fight, I believe he completely robbed Petr Yan. In this fight, I have seen enough of his skills where I was like, okay, this dude belongs at the top of the division. He completely convinced me that he belongs at the top of the division against Petr Yan, because that fight was very back and forth. Although I thought Petr Yan won again, Sean O'Malley absolutely belongs towards the number 3 contender that he is, is he the number 3 contender right now? For some reason I thought he was number 1. Oh no, that's gotta be Corey Sandhagen. Regardless, he belongs at the top division. He belongs in the top 5, okay? I'm completely convinced this guy's a real deal. Here's the thing though. Huge problems. Huge problems. You have Aljamain Sterling, who has been talking about how injured he is, and he just fought Henry Cejudo 2 months ago. Almost 3 months ago. That was a tough fight. That fight put his body through a lot. And he's been talking about how he didn't want to fight Sean O'Malley. He didn't want to have this quick turnaround and fight Sean O'Malley. While he could just be like having a built-in excuse. And the reason why I'm thinking that is because of the way he behaved after the Petr Yan win. Or the Petr Yan loss. I'm not going to count it out completely because he very well could be injured. He said he's needing to nurse injuries and he doesn't want to be taking on Sean O'Malley. He's not ready to fight. He's been saying that over and over again. If that's true, that's a huge problem. Sean O'Malley has been training for this fight before, like well before the Henry Cejudo fight. Sean O'Malley knew that he was going to get a title fight and he knew that it was going to probably be against Aljamain Sterling. Okay? That's why it's really, really tough to pick this fight and I don't know exactly what to think. Because, like, there's too many questions about this fight. If we were to assume they were both healthy, this is a straight-up grappler versus striker. You have Aljamain Sterling, if he gets it to the ground, then he would have no problem getting a submission. He's so good at transitioning, he's so good at sweeping, finding the back, getting a dominant position on the ground. He is so good at that. And Sean O'Malley is so good at striking, somewhere where Aljamain Sterling has a weakness. His striking is subpar at best. Sean O'Malley will absolutely be picking this guy apart on the feet. So it all depends if Aljamain Sterling can get this fight to the ground. If he does, it's going to be an easy night for Aljamain Sterling. If he doesn't, it's going to be an easy night for Sean O'Malley. That's why I have such a hard time picking this fight. If you made me pick, guys, I think Aljamain Sterling would get a hold of him. We've seen Petr Yan take down Sean O'Malley with ease, by the way. And yeah, Sean O'Malley he has thrown up some very nice defense. He has very nice butterfly hooks. He is always trying with those long legs to find a submission. But Aljamain Sterling is way too good at that. Way too good at that. He will see that coming from a mile away. Aljamain Sterling will sweep him and probably find either, I don't even know, he might choke him out. He can do whatever he wants to Sean O'Malley on the ground. This is a tough fight to pick. I'm going to lean towards Aljamain Sterling. I don't know what to think. I think this is more of a 50-50 fight. If you made me pick, I'd pick Aljamain Sterling. Over the 5 rounds, I got to assume that Aljamain Sterling will find a spot where he'll be able to take down Sean O'Malley. But if he can't, it's in for a rough night. I'm picking Aljamain Sterling. That is my final prediction, although I am not confident in it one little bit. But guys, that is going to do it for my full card breakdown and prediction video for UFC 292. Let me know what your picks will be down below, and thank you so much for watching this video. Look out for this week because we have a lot of UFC 292 content coming your way. If you'd like to continue watching the Clenbat channel, there'll be 2 videos on screen for you to check out right now. Check them out. I think they're pretty great. I will see you either there or in the next video, guys. Take care.